This is the best routine that you should do every single day to learn the press to handstand as fast as possible.
And we're going to show you exactly how to learn this movement with the best 5 exercises, starting with mobility.
Starting with the first exercise, and that is pike compression mobility. Because the first thing you need is not strength, but mobility to actually fold your body forward into that press to handstand. So Krista is going to demonstrate this exercise. So for this exercise, you're going to start with the wall. The aim of this exercise is to fold the body forward by using a little weight. So Krista is gonna extend her arms, place the glutes against the wall, and from here she's gonna fold her body forward. So let's show you right here. Exactly. But a very big mistake what people do is starting rounding from the lower back like this. But this is not what you want. You wanna extend and fold forward first from your shoulders, so reaching as far as possible. Then from the mid-back section, then the lower back. So you make your body as long as possible. And the exercise that you actually should be doing right here is doing a few dynamic pulses. So you want to bring the weight as much forward as possible. Look forward until here and come back up. And now you're gonna open up the chest even more and do it again. So you can go a little bit lower. So with each pulse, you can go a little bit lower while extending the body more forward, exactly like that. So that's 2. Aim for about 5 repetitions. Indeed, go a little bit lower. 3. And open up the chest again. Come on, a little bit lower, a little bit lower. There we go, 4, and raise back up. And the last one, extend your body as much forward as possible. Use the little weight and come back down. And now place your hands on the floor. And now you can see Krista is in the perfect starting point for the press to handstand. So this is the first exercise. Now let's move on to the second one. And that is pike compression lifts. Because now that we have the mobility foundation, we also need to work on active mobility, because just flexibility is not enough. We need to be able to lift the legs up to be able to press the handstand. So what would you say is the aim of this exercise?
The aim is to keep your legs as close to your body as possible, so your shoulders doesn't have to work as much.
Exactly. So it looks similar to the previous exercise, but now Krista is gonna spread out the legs into a straddle position, because we do the press to handstand first in the straddle position. From this starting position, she's gonna place the hands forward on the floor, and from here she's gonna raise her feet and legs slightly off the floor. Just small pulses, first left, exactly, then right. While super important, keeping the protraction and really pressing into the floor, so she keeps this rounded upper back and the shoulders depressed. So what would you say is a big mistake when people do this exercise?
A big mistake is placing your hands too close to your body, because then your hip flexors doesn't have to work anymore, and that's the aim of the exercise.
How does it look like?
Like this.
Exactly, so you can tell now it's super easy to do this exercise, right? So you're not actually working on the compression strength that you need. That's why you need to lean a little bit forward, keeping the hands on the floor, and really raise the legs from here while keeping this compressed position. In terms of reps and sets, what would you say is ideal?
I would say aim in between 4 to 6 reps and make each rep as much quality as possible.
What's a quality rep?
It's like you're really aiming to bring your leg up as high as possible while keeping your torso as forward as possible.
And the hands flat on the floor.
So this is quite a challenging exercise. So there's also an easier way of doing this. And that is that you're first bringing your knee up, then you try to straighten your leg as much as possible and bring it down. And there's also a harder variation of the exercise, and that is that you're bringing both of your legs up simultaneously.
And that is actually what we need with the press to handstand, because you're gonna raise your feet and legs together, right?
Yes.
So these are the two preparation exercises you need for the press to handstand. Now let's move on to the third exercise where we're actually going to work on our shoulder strength.
Let's move on to the shoulder lean hold, and this exercise will help you to build up the strength for the start position of the handstand press.
So Krista is going to start in the same position that we just finished with the previous exercise, but now in a standing position. So she brings her hands in front of her feet, and now with this exercise the goal is to lean as much forward as you can. So you bring the shoulders in front of the hands, and you can see Krista is pushing very tall from the shoulders. So really focus on elevating the shoulders and look at her toes. She is really floating on her feet, and that is the aim of this exercise. So you want to be as light as possible on your feet, because that will allow you to eventually press yourself up into a handstand position. So in terms of duration, you want to focus on 5 quality seconds where you push your shoulders as tall as possible right here, and this is going to be super hard. Do this for 5 seconds, go back, take about 30 seconds rest, and move forward again. 5 seconds, as tall as possible, really floating on your feet, and go back. Do this until you can do 10 seconds up to 20-second holds for each set that you do. So I know you've been working super hard to get to press to handstand, and I know that this particular part was super hard for you. So what is the thing that you struggled with, and what helped you to get over this point?
My biggest struggle was definitely my mobility. So my hamstring mobility was really lacking. So when I was in this position, I couldn't even put my hands on the floor. So if you are like me and you struggle with the same, you can just bring your legs a bit wider. So you can place your hands on the floor, really go in that protraction and lean.
That's a really good tip, because I feel like many people find it super hard to build up the strength in the shoulders and to get into that starting leaning position, while by actually spreading out your legs more, you can still get yourself into that position and start working on this part of the movement, right?
That's it. Yeah.
That's it. So now let's move on to the next exercise, and now we're actually going to work on the press to handstand mechanics. And we're going to do this with straddle press floats. So now we're going to use the end position of the previous exercise again, but make it a little bit harder into a dynamic exercise. So Krista is gonna lean forward again, pushing as tall as possible, but now instead of holding the position, she's gonna float forward. So she brings the feet off the floor and then bring the feet as close to the hands or even next to the hands right there. But the big goal here is to actually float on your feet, like Krista is doing. So you want to focus on pressing as tall as possible, leaning as much as possible until your feet actually comes off the floor naturally. So a big mistake what a lot of people do, like go a little bit back here, is kicking up instead of floating. In this case, people don't elevate the shoulders as much as they should and then exactly do this. They just kick your feet up, but now you're actually not floating. So this is not how you build up the strength. So one more time, focus on pressing, leaning, and float. So the goal of this exercise in terms of reps and sets is super low. So you just want to focus on only 1 small second of floating your feet off the floor. That's the first goal, right? Until you start feeling you can float a little bit longer, like for 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and making those tiny jumps a little bit bigger each time. But we both know that this one is super hard to get started with. So do you know like an alternative, easy variation that people can do to like bridge the gap?
Yes. So you're going to stand in the same position and just tapping your hand and tapping your other hand. And then you're walking forward and tapping, so you can slightly make it easier and build it up.
Now let's move on to the final exercise to bring this all together into the press to handstand.
And now we're working on the elevated handstand press, and this will help you to understand the full movement without the hardest part, because the hardest part is pressing up from the floor. So that's why we're making it easier with this elevation.
Exactly. So Krista is going to place her feet on the elevation exactly in the same straddle position as with the previous exercise. Now she's going to stack her shoulders directly above her hands. Now Krista is going to lean forward again, pointing her toes until her feet is slightly moving away from the bench like this, and she's going to float and keep holding this position. This is the first variation. So you don't want to make this super challenging for yourself and press fully into the handstand. Just holding this position is the first step. Once you've nailed this, we can start working on the next variation in this progression. So just coming off the bench is the first variation. Now the second one is actually pressing yourself up into a handstand. So you start in the same position, moving the hands forward, getting into the hold, right this, and now press up. And now simultaneously, Krista is gonna close her legs like that, super smooth. You can just fall forward, rotate, what you normally do in a handstand, all right? Super good, that was really clean. So this is part 3 of this variation. So same position, Krista is gonna start right here, moving forward, first the hold, then the press, as controlled as possible, feet bringing together. Now she's gonna open up the legs again, and now she's gonna bring her feet towards the floor. And this will allow you to actually train the full movement until you can start working on the press to handstand from the floor. So what are the biggest focus points of this exercise?
For me, what I'm focusing on is that I'm elevating my shoulder as much as possible, and at the same time I'm holding my leg as close to my body as possible.
That's what we learned with the first 2 exercises of this routine. So now let's wrap up this all together and show how it looks when you do this from the floor. So what if you can actually do this variation from the bench? How are we gonna bridge the gap towards an actual handstand press from the floor?
Yeah, you can just lower the elevation every time, so eventually you can do it from the floor.
And let's show how that looks like. So eventually, if you've mastered the elevated straddle press, you can bring your hands on the floor and raise from there into a press to handstand. Super controlled and smooth. And even going down and doing the eccentric as well. Alright, so these were the top 5 exercises that you should do in order to learn the press to handstand as fast as possible.
And don't forget the 3 most important cues, and that is leaning forward, holding your shoulders elevated, and keep your legs as close as possible.
So if you want to learn the handstand from scratch, so you can actually build up to the handstand press, make sure to check out our CALISTHENICS family workout app, where you can follow structured workout plans and skill mastery courses, for example, for the handstand, starting from complete 0 novice level all the way to advanced, so you can actually start working on the foundations of the press to handstand. Make sure to check out the first link in the description and download and start our app today for free. Also, make sure to follow Krista on her socials and check out CALISTHENICS family on Instagram as well. And lastly, we're also doing a weekly giveaway on our channel, and today we're giving away 1 set of CALISTHENICS family parallettes, so you can start working your handstands on these parallettes and really boost your progress from there. How to win? Make sure to like, subscribe and comment within the first 7 days after publishing this video. And lastly, what kind of video should we create next?
Is that the pull-up, the muscle up, or the L-sit?
Let us know in the comments and we will check it out and create that video for you guys. Peace out.